There's a silent transformation happening in men who walk alone. Not because they've failed to find love, but because they've chosen to find themselves first. The world often sees a single man as incomplete, waiting for a partner to finally settle down, to finally become something. But what most people don't realize is that the longer a man walks this world alone, the more dangerous he becomes, not in the way of violence, but in power, discipline, and purpose. Because the man who's been alone learns to conquer solitude. He learns to face the silence. He learns to sit with his demons, outlast them, and emerge with unshakable clarity. No validation. No distractions. Just raw, unfiltered growth. He's not looking to fill a void anymore. He's building empires from it. While some men chase relationships to escape loneliness, the dangerous man uses loneliness as fuel. He works on his body, trains his mind, builds his wealth, and expands his vision. Every day alone is another brick laid in the fortress of his legacy. He becomes harder to manipulate. Why? Because he no longer needs anyone. He wants, he chooses, but he doesn't beg. He sees through games, filters out chaos, and holds his time like treasure. Women can sense it too. They're drawn to him not because he's needy, but because he's self-sufficient. Not because he demands attention, but because he commands respect. His aura isn't born of arrogance, it's carved from discipline. And here's the twist, the longer he stays single, the more selective he becomes. He won't settle for pretty faces without substance. He's looking for a woman who brings peace, purpose, and presence, not noise. So, if you see a man walking alone, don't assume he's weak. You might be looking at a storm wrapped in calm. A man who doesn't chase the world because he's too busy mastering himself. That's why the longer a man is single, the more dangerous he becomes. When a man spends extended time in solitude, something profound begins to shift within him. At first, the silence can be deafening. He might feel the void, the absence of company, of validation, of the noise that once distracted him from himself. But in that silence lies the very terrain where strength is born. It's in those quiet hours, when no one is watching, that a man is forced to face who he truly is. There's no applause for his efforts, no comforting words to ease his doubts. Just the raw reality of his life, his choices, and his mindset. And that's exactly where the transformation begins. Most people run from solitude because it exposes the truth. It reveals your insecurities, your fears, and the stories you've been telling yourself to avoid responsibility. But the man who remains, who doesn't escape into shallow relationships, numbing addictions, or endless distractions, starts to see solitude not as a punishment, but as a proving ground. He begins to understand that loneliness and solitude are two different things. Loneliness is the pain of being without others. Solitude is the power of being with yourself. In solitude, a man learns to become his own motivator. He stops waiting for others to push him. He begins to train, to study, to build, not because someone told him to, but because he's begun to hunger for his own greatness. There's something deeply primal about a man who wakes up each day with no one telling him what to do, yet he chooses the harder path anyway. He disciplines himself when no one is watching. He chooses growth over comfort. Every morning run, every page read, every hour of focused work becomes an act of rebellion against weakness. He's not doing it to impress anyone, he's doing it because he refuses to remain average. As the days roll into months, the noise that once filled his mind begins to fade. The voice of doubt gets quieter, and a new voice begins to rise, one of conviction, clarity, and purpose. This is a man who no longer chases distractions to feel alive. He finds energy in his goals, peace in his routines, and power in his solitude. He becomes the kind of man who doesn't just survive in silence, he thrives in it. This kind of strength cannot be bought, borrowed, or faked. It's earned. It's forged in the quiet hours when nobody else sees the work being done. The world will eventually see the results, but only he will know what it cost. And because he's done the work alone, he becomes unshakable. He doesn't crumble under criticism. He doesn't need constant reassurance. He's built a foundation that doesn't rely on applause or external support. Solitude also teaches patience. When a man no longer fears being alone, he stops rushing into things just to fill the emptiness. He becomes deliberate in his actions. He can wait for the right opportunity, the right people, the right moment, because he's no longer operating from desperation. He's grounded. He knows what he wants, and more importantly, he knows what he doesn't need. There is a quiet danger in such a man. Not because he's aggressive or reckless, but because he's mastered himself. That kind of strength is rare. It's the kind that doesn't shout but is felt. It's the strength of a man who doesn't flinch in the face of pressure, who doesn't chase approval, and who doesn't fold when life gets hard. He's been through the fire of his own solitude, and he came out stronger, sharper, and more focused than ever. That's why solitude builds strength, and why the man who has embraced it is never the same again. There comes a point in a man's life where he realizes that no one is coming to save him. No one is going to build his dreams, fix his past, or carry him to greatness. That realization is both sobering and liberating. It marks the beginning of self-mastery, the moment he stops outsourcing his happiness, peace, and identity to other people, and starts becoming the source of those things himself. This is where dependency dies, and true power begins. A man who is dependent on others for his emotional stability is always at the mercy of the world. One wrong word, one rejection, one loss, and he crumbles. He looks to women to validate his worth, to friends to reinforce his decisions, to society to tell him who he is. But the man on the path of self-mastery doesn't ask for permission. He doesn't beg to be seen. He moves through life with inner authority because he has fought for it. He's done the hard work of facing himself, taming his impulses, and mastering his desires. And in doing so, he's broken the chains of dependency that once held him down. Self-mastery isn't about being cold or detached. It's about being in control. It's about being able to feel emotions without being ruled by them. It's about making decisions based on principles, not pressure. Most men react to life, they get triggered, provoked, manipulated. But the man who has cultivated self-mastery responds. He pauses. He analyzes. He sees through the noise and acts from a place of clarity. That control isn't just mental, it's emotional and physical, too. He trains his body not for looks, but for discipline. He organizes his time because he knows wasted time is wasted life. He controls his environment because he knows it shapes his mind. Every part of his life becomes an extension of his values, not a reflection of his past wounds. When a man is no longer dependent, relationships become choices, not needs. He doesn't need a woman to feel worthy. He doesn't cling to people who drain him. He doesn't settle for connections that distract him from his purpose. Instead, he invites people into his life who align with his mission, who respect his boundaries, who elevate his growth. And if they don't? He walks away without drama, because his world doesn't collapse without them. He is already whole. Dependency makes a man weak. Not because needing others is wrong, but because building your entire identity around someone else's opinion is dangerous. It leaves you vulnerable to manipulation, heartbreak, and confusion. But when a man learns to stand alone, when he stops asking others to complete him, he becomes dangerous in the best way. He becomes the kind of man who doesn't break when life tests him. He becomes the kind of man who can lead, protect, and build, not from ego, but from mastery. This journey isn't glamorous. It's filled with difficult choices, uncomfortable truths, and long stretches of silence where nothing seems to be happening. But that's where the real transformation occurs. Not in the spotlight, but in the shadows. Not with applause, but in solitude. Every time a man says no to distraction, every time he chooses discipline over comfort, every time he faces a fear head-on instead of running, it adds another layer to his strength. Over time, he becomes someone even he can trust. And that trust in himself, that unshakable belief that he can handle whatever comes, is the mark of a man who has mastered himself. Dependency ends where self-respect begins. And the man who has earned that self-respect through mastery becomes a force that no one can control, because he has already conquered the one opponent that matters most, himself. Emotional independence is one of the most underrated and misunderstood forms of power a man can possess. In a world where reactions are easily triggered and people are constantly looking outward for reassurance, the man who remains steady in his emotions becomes a rare force. Emotional independence doesn't mean shutting off your feelings or pretending you don't care. It means you feel everything, but nothing owns you. You can love without losing yourself. You can hurt without collapsing. You can be alone without being lonely. Most men are trained from an early age to suppress their emotions or rely on others to process them. They learn to seek comfort from relationships, validation from achievements, and relief through distractions. But none of those things provide lasting peace. They only delay the inevitable confrontation with self. The man who lacks emotional independence constantly needs someone else to stabilize him. If his relationship is rocky, his entire life is thrown off balance. If someone criticizes him, it shakes his confidence. If life doesn't go as planned, he spirals. His emotions are tied to everything he can't control, and that makes him weak. True emotional power begins when a man takes full responsibility for how he feels. Not just in theory, but in practice. He stops blaming the world, women, parents, or circumstance for his emotional state. He stops saying, "She made me angry," or "They made me feel worthless." No one makes him feel anything anymore, because he's learned to manage his inner world. This doesn't mean he's emotionless. It means he's in control. He can feel anger without becoming destructive. He can experience sadness without falling apart. He can be in love and still maintain his identity. The emotionally independent man is grounded. When chaos surrounds him, he doesn't react impulsively. He breathes. He thinks. He chooses his response. That kind of control is intimidating because it means he's unshakable. People can try to manipulate him, provoke him, guilt-trip him, but it won't work. Why? Because his center of gravity isn't external. It's within. His peace isn't dependent on others behaving a certain way. It's built from daily discipline, mental clarity, and an unbreakable relationship with himself. This kind of man is hard to guilt, hard to seduce with flattery, and impossible to break with insults. He's seen his own darkness. He's wrestled with pain, with rejection, with insecurity, and he didn't run. He stayed. He faced it. And now, those emotional storms that would wreck the average man don't even shake him. That's power. Quiet, calm, commanding power. Women respect this kind of man because he doesn't need them, he chooses them. He doesn't fall apart when they pull away. He doesn't chase or beg. He doesn't argue over nonsense just to feel in control. He brings calm. He brings clarity. And because he doesn't demand emotional labor from his partner, he becomes a safe place, not a burden. In every area of life, emotional independence is a superpower. In business, it allows him to navigate pressure with grace. In friendships, it lets him give without expectation. In personal growth, it pushes him to evolve without relying on praise. He's free. And with that freedom comes an unshakable presence. He becomes the kind of man others look to in times of crisis, not because he's loud or forceful, but because he's centered. Grounded. Unmoved. Emotional independence isn't built overnight. It's forged through countless moments of discomfort where a man refuses to react, refuses to collapse, and chooses to rise above instead. And every time he does, his power grows, not over others, but over himself. That's real strength. That's leadership. That's the kind of power no one can take from him. When a man stops chasing distractions and starts using solitude as a forge, time begins to shift from being an enemy to becoming an ally. Most people are at war with time. They feel rushed, behind, overwhelmed. They waste it on things that drain them, scrolling, pleasing others, numbing their dissatisfaction with temporary pleasure. But the man who is alone, who chooses solitude and discipline, begins to see time differently. He doesn't fill it, he invests it. Every hour becomes a tool. Every day becomes a chance to sharpen his edge. And every moment alone becomes a window to build what others are too distracted to even dream of. When you remove the noise, time stretches. You begin to notice how long an hour really is when you're not trying to escape it. And in that hour, a man can read, lift, learn, build, reflect, and rewire the patterns that held him back for years. Instead of fearing empty space, he thrives in it. He knows that real transformation doesn't happen when you're rushing, it happens when you slow down and get intentional. Time, in the hands of a focused man, is like a blade in the hands of a skilled warrior. He doesn't swing wildly. He moves with precision. As this man evolves, he no longer envies those who seem ahead. He doesn't compare timelines or panic over milestones. He understands that rushing is what ruins most people. They're in such a hurry to be successful, to be loved, to be known, that they skip the grind that would make them truly solid. But he's playing a different game. A long game. He knows that empires aren't built in a weekend. They're constructed over years of consistent effort, brick by brick, decision by decision. And because he isn't desperate for quick results, he can be patient with the process. That patience is his advantage. Most men want quick fixes, shortcuts, instant wins. But the man who sees time as an ally is willing to delay gratification. He'll work out without results for months. He'll save money while others flex for attention. He'll learn the skill before expecting the reward. Because he knows that when you respect time, it rewards you with compound growth. What starts as small wins turn into unstoppable momentum. There's another gift time gives to the man who walks alone: clarity. In the stillness, when life slows down, he starts to see things for what they really are. He realizes who truly matters. What truly matters. He starts to filter out the noise, not just from others, but from within himself. The longer he walks with time, the clearer his path becomes. That's when his choices get sharper. He no longer chases women, trends, or approval. He's not trying to catch up to the world. He's focused on his own race, on his own terms, with his own internal compass guiding him. And because he's mastered time, he starts to see how others waste it. He watches people burn years in meaningless arguments, toxic relationships, shallow pleasures, and unending distractions. He doesn't judge them, he just refuses to join them. He values his time because he knows it's the one thing he can never get back. So he protects it, organizes it, respects it. He doesn't overcommit. He says no often. And every yes he gives is aligned with his mission, his values, and his long-term vision. Eventually, this man begins to move differently. He's never in a rush, but he's always advancing. His calm presence confuses people who live in chaos. His quiet confidence isn't loud, but it's undeniable. Why? Because he's partnered with time. He's let it shape him, teach him, and mature him. And now, while others are running in circles, he's building something that lasts. Time is no longer his enemy, it's his most loyal weapon. When a man spends enough time alone, learning who he is and what he stands for, something powerful begins to shift. He no longer entertains just anything or anyone. He becomes selective. He becomes intentional. Not because he thinks he's better than others, but because he's finally discovered his worth and refuses to compromise it. He no longer moves out of desperation, fear of being alone, or the need for external approval. His decisions come from clarity, not confusion. From purpose, not pressure. The man who's been through seasons of solitude has confronted his demons. He's endured boredom, faced emotional storms, and walked through the fire of self-reflection. And because of that, he's learned the difference between what feels good and what is good. That knowledge makes him dangerous in the best way. He no longer chases excitement, he chases alignment. He doesn't waste energy on people who drain him, nor does he tolerate shallow conversations, meaningless relationships, or distractions that devour his time. He knows what matters. He knows where he's going. And anything that doesn't support that direction gets left behind, no apologies. Being selective isn't about being rigid, it's about being wise. It means he doesn't jump at every opportunity, say yes to every invite, or open his heart to anyone who knocks. He filters life through the lens of his values. He protects his peace like a fortress. His time, energy, and presence become sacred currency, and not everyone gets access. Because he's tasted what it feels like to be betrayed, misused, or overlooked. He's done entertaining chaos just to feel needed. He's done sacrificing his vision for temporary company. From now on, everything he allows into his life must earn its place. That mindset applies to relationships, too. He no longer falls for potential. He watches actions, not words. He studies energy, not appearance. He's not fooled by chemistry if there's no character behind it. He knows that beauty fades and charm can be fake, but alignment, that's rare. He wants a connection that elevates, not just excites. And until he finds that, he's content being alone. Because he'd rather be alone in building than with someone who breaks him piece by piece. Intentional living also changes how he approaches goals. He stops multitasking and starts mastering. He picks a direction and goes all in. He doesn't dabble. He commits. He wakes up with purpose. Every move has a reason. Every step builds toward something bigger. There's no more drifting, no more winging it, no more "we'll see what happens." His life becomes a project under construction, and he's the architect, the laborer, and the investor. Everything he touches is marked by focus. This intentionality affects his presence, too. He's not scattered. He's centered. When he's in a room, he's fully there. When he speaks, it's deliberate. He listens more than he talks. He moves slower, but with more certainty. He doesn't overexploit himself trying to be everywhere, please everyone, or impress people who aren't even watching. He's not available to just anything anymore. He's moved beyond that phase. And that makes him powerful. People start to notice. They might call him mysterious, intense, or even intimidating, but what they're really feeling is his discernment. His boundaries. His refusal to waste himself. That kind of man stands out because he doesn't come around often. He's not easily swayed. Not easily impressed. And definitely not easily accessed. Because he's done the work. He's built himself. And now, he protects what he built. That's what happens when a man becomes selective and intentional. His life stops being an accident and starts becoming a legacy. A man who has spent time in solitude, who has faced his own thoughts without distraction, emerges with a presence that is both grounded and powerful. He no longer seeks to be seen, he simply is. He doesn't chase validation, likes, or praise. He doesn't need the spotlight to feel significant. That's because his self-worth no longer hinges on applause. He's not performing for approval, he's living with purpose. And because of that, he commands respect, not attention. Attention is easy to get. Flash a little money, speak a little louder, dress to impress, act outrageous, and the world will notice you. But respect is harder. It's quiet. It's earned. It's built in the dark, away from the eyes of the crowd. The man who commands respect isn't loud, he's consistent. He doesn't boast, he delivers. He doesn't fake it, he becomes it. He's not trying to outshine others, he's focused on outgrowing his former self. And that silent pursuit of excellence creates a gravity around him. People may not understand it, but they feel it. He walks into a room and doesn't demand attention, yet heads still turn. Why? Because he's centered. His body language speaks without needing words. His eye contact holds truth. His silence carries weight. He listens more than he speaks, but when he does speak, people listen. Not because he's flashy, but because his words are forged from experience, not ego. He's not trying to dominate others, he's mastered himself. And that mastery commands respect without effort. This man doesn't need to prove anything. He doesn't post every win or argue every opinion. He knows who he is, and he moves accordingly. That confidence is built on results, not rhetoric. It's built from the promises he kept to himself when no one was watching. The late nights he spent working, the early mornings of discipline, the inner battles he won. That kind of man doesn't have to yell. His life speaks for him. And when it comes to relationships, he's different too. He doesn't beg for attention or compete for love. He doesn't need constant reassurance or public displays to feel secure. Because his foundation is internal. He's not afraid of being misunderstood or disliked, because he knows that popularity is cheap, but self-respect is priceless. He chooses people who see his value without him having to advertise it. He'd rather be respected by a few than adored by the masses for a version of himself that isn't real. He also knows when to walk away. He doesn't chase disrespect. He doesn't argue with fools. He doesn't explain his boundaries to people committed to crossing them. That restraint, that ability to stay silent and detached when others would lash out, is power. It's not weakness, it's composure. And that composure, over time, earns respect from those who truly understand strength. People begin to trust him not just because he's competent, but because he's consistent. His presence is reliable. He does what he says he'll do. He keeps his word, not for the applause, but because it's who he is. And in a world full of noise, exaggeration, and empty promises, that kind of man is rare. Eventually, people stop asking what makes him different. They just know. They feel it in how he carries himself. In the energy he brings. In the calm certainty of his movements. He doesn't follow trends or beg for followers. He leads, even when no one's watching. That's why he's respected. Not because he demanded it, but because he earned it. Attention fades, but respect, that's something he wears like armor. And it was forged in the fire of becoming someone he can look in the mirror and be proud of. So understand this, when a man spends time alone, truly alone, he isn't wasting time. He's sharpening. He's studying. He's rebuilding everything the world tried to break in him. The longer he walks that solitary path, the clearer he sees, the stronger he gets, and the harder he becomes to manipulate, distract, or destroy. He stops needing validation. He stops chasing people who don't value him. He stops folding under pressure. Because now he has something far more powerful than approval. He has control over himself. He becomes deliberate, precise, patient, and fiercely protective of his time, energy, and purpose. And that's why he becomes dangerous, not in a reckless way, but in a refined, disciplined, unshakable way. Because once a man learns to stand alone, he becomes the kind of man who can no longer be broken. Not by rejection. Not by loneliness. Not even by the world. He doesn't just survive, he evolves. And when he finally decides to step back into the world, he doesn't come back as the same man who left. He comes back as a weapon. A man of purpose. A man of principle. A man no one forgets. That is the power of solitude. That is the danger of a man who learns to stand on his own.